I think the intention that we have versus your child's understanding, it's also very important. Because when you think it's monitoring, like I say, put screen time, set limits, they may think it's controlling. Yeah. So you have to explain to them why you need to do that and why you need to monitor and have a conversation. So it's very hard to, dissect that, but you have to have a common language with your teen, especially about what it means about these two, terms. So that if you have a buy-in from them, knowing that you're monitoring because it's for their concern rather than, controlling them, you can see the relationships, either it's going to hurt or it's going to blossom.
So hello and welcome to Catholic Parents Online, a podcast channel where we share tips and resources with Catholic parents. Presented through the lens of the theology of the body, we will see how we can be gift to our children in ways that will help them find true happiness and flourish in accordance with God's wonderful plan for each and every one of them. My name is John Hui and I'm your host for this series. Today we're going to discuss how we can help our children manage screen time. As we know, screen time is ubiquitous in today's world, and many of our children have access to devices, isn't it? So it would seem rather foolhardy for us to think we can or should totally keep our children away from them. They will gain access to devices sooner or later, like it or not, somehow or other. Yeah. Yet, how can we help our children manage devices and screen time in a way that is beneficial rather than detrimental? What can we Catholic parents do to optimize our children's digital experience? With us to share her experience and expertise, we have Miss Natalie Lim, principal psychologist who has extensive experience working in a clinical setting and a mother of 3 teens herself. Welcome to the podcast, Natalie.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. John. Thank you for inviting me. Well, I'm very honored to be here to share my experience because, like you mentioned, I have 3 teens. And with today's, context of, what we're doing right now with screen time, I think this is so important because this is something we cannot escape from. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, I'm a mother of 3 teens. My eldest is in secondary 3, my middle child Sec 1, and my youngest primary 6 this year. My husband is a psychiatrist working in the private sector right now. And as we are very busy parents, and so I'm very thankful that we have our parents helping us with our children. Yeah, it's so important to have help out there because, for us to actually focus on our job and also focus on parenting. So as for my work itself, I've been a psychologist for almost about 18 years.
Wow.
Talking about this, I feel so old. But anyway.
Wait till we find out my age, right?
Yeah, I know that. I don't know where to get there, but anyway. Okay, so.
Well, I'll have to welcome to the club sooner or later.
I'm getting there. Okay, so in my field, I do see children, I see teens, I see adults, and they come with a variety of issues. Like, for example, they have learning disabilities, and I have quite a number of clients coming to see me, mainly for anxiety and depression as well. But I actually thank God because I had also this privilege to be able to work with schools where I given talks to parents, teachers, and also students about mental health. Yeah. So
you're excellent person to speak to and to consult on this area of screen time.
I'm not sure. Screen time is like I'm also learning. I mean, it's not just the book knowledge, right, that we get or information
Certainly.
from in the internet, but actually when you're right here as a parent practicing, it's really tough.
Yeah, really tough. Can't agree with you more.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Perhaps one good way of starting or continuing this conversation this morning is to refer to an advisory titled Guidance on Screen Use in Children, released by the Ministry of Health in March this year. Now, this advisory provides practical suggestions to families with children aged 0 to 12 years old on how to organize and manage their children's screen use. The advisory noted that, quote, children can benefit from screen use, such as when family members co-view content together and talk about what they're watching. Educational screen use among children could lead to academic gains and cognitive development. Older children can also benefit from screen use by maintaining and developing friendships online and using educational games and resources. There are potential downsides to screen use, particularly in children below 36 months of age, as it is a sensitive period of brain development. The advisory further noted that children under the age of 18 months have difficulty absorbing information from two-dimensional screens. So excessive screen use is associated, right, with poorer language skills and shorter attention spans in infants and toddlers. Now, while much of the evidence to date has limitations, there appears to be associations between screen use and insufficient good quality sleep, sedentary behaviors, increased obesity, and poorer mental health and well-being. These potential negative consequences are linked to the degree that screen use displaces other activities, like sleeping, playing, and interacting with friends, or being physically active. Longer periods of smartphone usage may increase the likelihood of ocular symptoms, eye symptoms, including myopia, eye strain, and dry eyes, especially in children. However, further studies with objective screen time measurements are necessary to assess evidence of an association between screen time and myopia. Unquote. Now, that was quite a mouthful, but the advisory further noted that, quote, parental supervision and collaborating with children to adopt healthy screen habits helps to prevent uncontrolled, excessive, and unhealthy screen practices, unquote. Okay, so Natalie, how can parents supervise and collaborate with our children to adopt such healthy screen time habits? We both know it is not easy.
Not easy. I think the word parental supervision is a very loaded word. What does it really mean, right? So you think about it, it's like we say supervision, we're thinking about, okay, looking after, taking control. But I think it's important, but not about control, but basically monitoring, about what they're doing. So, especially young children, they are actually, when you give them the phone or anything to watch, right, they're not able to make decisions for themselves. So at this point of time, you have to help them make decisions. So it's like exposing them to the right kind of programs, how long that you need to expose to them. So for example, like children who are aged 2 years and above, the recommendation is providing them with education programs, especially these programs that are designed mainly to help them with their early language and literacy skills. Okay, and also things that can help them enhance also the social and language skills. I mean, growing up, I remember watching Sesame Street. I thought there was, and today, right, the research has shown that this has helped us. I mean, besides interacting with my parents, but this actually exposed me to a lot of skill sets. Okay. So this is one program that if it's still on, I think it's still on. I'm not sure.
It is.
It is still on. Okay,
it
great.
Is still on.
So,
yeah.
I see. I'm not at the age watching it anymore with my
But it's probably a different person playing Elmo and Big Bird.
Probably, but they introduced a lot of other characters in there with the times, right? I remember that. So, I mean, as there's many literacy programs or education programs out there, I think we need to be careful what we choose. And
Absolutely.
also, not too many programs for them.
Mm-hmm.
And because as I said, your child cannot make decisions at this point so the informed decisions come from the parent themselves, or what the child can actually be exposed to and how long they can actually watch. And if you let them watch it, it's also recommended that, like you said, parents be with them, watching with them. And you've rightly pointed out just now with the whole, things that you're talking about.
That big mouthful, right?
Yeah, lots of it is about early exposure to screens. Excessive use, because the research are out there to demonstrate what is the detrimental effects as well on especially the brain, because this is the part where your child brains, right, at this young age is starting to develop, and what it needs is language, right? The child needs to speak, so it needs to develop the aspects of it. The brain needs to actually also as we say, grow in a way. That's where your motor skills also needs to be also developed, and your social emotional aspects. These are what we call executive functioning skills. They are very important, especially the first 2 years of your child's life. So getting them on the screen for early, they're not doing anything except just sitting there watching, absorbing information, but we're not sure what they're actually absorbing. So I think when child is being exposed too early, it also diminishes the quality, the quantity time of interaction with the caregiver. Can you imagine the child can't really relate to you because it's more, the child's relating to the screen rather to what you talk to the child every day. So I think it's important to be aware what you're exposing, how much time, and best, before 2 years old, the recommendation is not to expose them to screen time except maybe video chatting with family members. Yeah,
And
so that's
grandparents too. And grandparents too.
yeah, I think
Right.
it's important, especially if I think I mean we have relatives who are overseas, right? Like my sister's in Canada. So the
Yes.
way we go about it is to actually have that exchange of conversation, and it's still good. I think, and we don't spend a long time, but good enough to have that bond and
Mm-hmm.
catch up time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think kids need that, especially if your family members are away.
Yes.
Yeah, this is important.
Yes.
So I talked about the young kids, but now how about the older kids, like primary and secondary school kids, right? Parental supervision, what does that mean again? I think it's important to set structures for them. Okay, so we are very strict in my family. We are strict enough to tell them, okay, you have to finish your things first. For example, your schoolwork, then you're allowed to actually do your whatever you want to do. They also have screen time. So my husband is very good at this. He makes sure that the screen time is set from what time to what time. On weekends, we give them a bit more time. Okay. So at least they know that they have this period of time. So the screen time is about to end, right? Well, I can see them all using the phone as fast as they can. Oh, screen time, I need to text my friend, so
Yes,
they know
yes,
that that's the
yes.
time where they cannot text anymore.
I
this,
probably do the same. So yeah.
yeah, please do. I think it's very helpful because then when they cannot do any more with their phones, they have to find other ways to entertain themselves, right? So
Yes.
that's important. So they need to be aware about how they manage their time with the screens. So we also tell them that we need to track what they also watch. So we do look at that, and then sometimes when we will come and then show them, hey, you spent hours on this YouTube. Because it was really good that we can see how much time they're doing WhatsApp and stuff like that. So at least to educate them and say, okay, among three of you, who spend most time on this, who spend most time on that. It's not a competition, but it's just to let them know.
Right.
And what are you using? So we have a conversation about that. So I think it's
Very
important
good.
because we have
That's
to
very good.
learn from our kids about what are they exposing to. And I think in our occupation, right, we do see the other side of things, which it's also the detrimental side of things. So we're quite worried about what our kids are watching.
That's right.
And how long they're also using it and what they're using it for.
That's right. That's right. I think I like what you brought up just now about the importance of choosing appropriate programs for our children to make sure that they are not only educational at the appropriate age level, but also convey the right values that you want to share with them, because there may be some programs that perhaps may not convey certain values that you would agree with, and therefore you might want to screen them off.
Yes. So screen first before you actually show them.
Yeah, and watch with them if we can, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the importance of interaction, the physical interaction between us and our children is so important from what you have said so far. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bonding time as well. As we talk a lot about this, building relationships.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. So it's an opportunity to bond with them and at the same time share with them and ask each other questions about what's happening and what they are watching and what's their interest and so on, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, I'm with this age group, right? Like my kids who are twins and teens. Okay. You cannot stop them from using the phones.
Yes.
But this is so important to them because they are forming relationships at this point of their life, right?
Yes.
So communication is really important to them. So you can see that I mentioned to you that texting to a friend is so important before, like first thing in the morning. And then before they sleep, oh my gosh, it's like, don't you want to be the first and the last person they want to greet, right? But
yeah, that's right.
It's not how it is, during this period of time. But I think it's really important to share with parents right here is that you don't stop them from using it, because the fact is that when they use this for communication with their peers, they're actually getting support from the peers, and it has shown to have positive impact for their mental health actually. When you use it correctly, especially their good social relationships, because it's so important to them. So don't just go to the other extreme where it's like, I have to take your phones away, because this is really something important to them.
That's right. This brings us to another point which you also brought up earlier, which I thought was very good: the difference between monitoring and control. Right. So perhaps for the benefit for our listeners, would you like to share with us the difference between the two, monitoring versus control?
Oh, sometimes it overlaps. Yeah, I think the intention that we have versus your child's understanding, it's also very important. Because when you think it's monitoring, like I say, put screen time, set limits, they may think it's controlling. Yeah, so you have to explain to them why you need to do that and why you need to monitor and have a conversation. So it's very hard to, dissect that, but you have to have a common language with your teen, especially, about what it means about this tool terms. So that if you have a buy-in from them, knowing that you're monitoring because it's for their concern rather than, controlling them, you can see the relationships, either it's going to hurt or it's going to blossom.
Yeah.
One or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I heard some other parents sharing that what they do is that they have certain apps whereby they monitor each other's usage of screen time. So apparently the administrator, who is usually the parent, would allow the children to see what they themselves have been
they can
doing.
See.
Yes, so that they can actually see how the parents are using screen time and what the parents are accessing, so that it is a kind of like a shared responsibility and not just one-way traffic whereby only the parents are controlling the children. And then the parents are doing whatever they want to do,
Yeah. Yes. So that we have actually an app for family sharing. So we also have that. The funny thing is that we are interested, they're not interested in what we are doing.
I'm sure they better not be interested in the same thing. Yeah, but I'm sure the opportunity to share with them and let them know that what we are doing is not different from what they are doing in terms of the appropriate, responsible use of screen time is something which is a good role model for them.
Yes. Yeah, like you said, it's not a one-way thing, it's a two-way thing. You want to, we can do this as a family and we share. There's nothing to hide. I mean, it's good to know, who is using for what and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So for the benefit of our listeners, right? Can you share with us what is the app that you use to monitor each other's usage of screen time?
Okay. So I think the app is actually, my husband is really good at this. He does all the setting and stuff. And I'm just the follower. So he has this family sharing that it's, I think, in the Apple app that you can do, so that when you join in, we all can see each other's stuff. We also have connect to each other's phone to find each other.
Okay.
So this is something that we do it so that we know that we're doing it as a collective thing.
Yes.
Rather than, like you said, the word controlling, which is another form, is one way.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So it's kind of mutual responsibility and being responsible and caring for each other.
Yes.
Yes. That's great. So what we have discussed so far also seems to point to this thing about active screen use versus passive screen use. I remember you mentioning just now about the kind of programs we let them watch, and also how we discuss over the use of the various programs and apps that they may be using, and games perhaps, So the difference between active screen use and passive screen use, and screen experience versus screen time. Would you like to share with us what the differences are and what parents can do to help our children use screen time more fruitfully?
Okay. I mean, to me, these are all terms also, but, bear with me about this.
Sure.
So in the sense of passive, as the word passive screen use is like, watching TV, like you're absorbing the information. Your brain is not doing very much. There's no creativity. There's no thought. There's no interaction. It's like a one-way street. So, people watching videos, binge watching, these are part of it. And even repetitive games that people engage is also part of passive use. Yeah. So when we talk about active, it's like right now we're interacting. There's a two-way things where we are physically or cognitively involved, or there's engagement with the device at this point. So for this one example, playing education games is also good. So, my son likes to do some editing of pictures and videos. So this is another way of engaging because you're using your brain to do something in itself. So as you know, passive and active screen use is one aspect. We talk about screen time, as the word screen time talks about the time that you use, at that point in time, how much information you're gathering. But this screen time can be active use or passive use. Okay. You want to talk about screen experience, it kind of overlaps like active screen use. It's about the interactive experience that you are, gathering at this point in time. So like a workout or some creative use, what are you gathering at this experience at this point? So I mentioned earlier, this experience, I mean, they're just terms. Then you ask, for example, so what's the difference? And now you know the difference, how do you use it? Yeah.
Right. Let's go now to a little bit more into the specific age groups, right? For children, start off with the children less than 18 months of age, right? How should parents manage their screen time, or should they be watching anything at all?
Oh, well, you talk about, 18 months, that's about 1.5 years old, right?
Yeah.
The recommendation out there, I think we already seen it. It's a no. Preferably not at all, but except you want to do video calls, chatting, it's fine. Okay. So the recommendation is preferably no, but if you feel that it's necessary, please just reduce to educational programs. Okay.
Right.
And again, with a caregiver.
Right.
Okay. The reason again why the guidelines are there is because, as I mentioned earlier, the children at the first 2 years of their life are developing, the brain is developing. So you want them to be able to develop that part of the skill sets, okay, which is having to, let's say, the motor skills is very important to them to grasp things. They need to focus, pay attention. These are important things. So you need to do things like, for example, play recall games, like peekaboo, that kind of thing. That's kind of engaging, hide and seek, learning rhyme songs. These are good for working memories. So you help them with this. And then we also engage what we call cause and effect toys. Like, those toys that you have, those like, press something and then something comes out.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. So these are things that they figure out which one is to what songs and something like that. This help them not just the working memory, but it's also help them solve problems. So you can see as it goes, there are things you can do with your child other than, the screen times, screen devices. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems that the key is really the interaction between the caregiver and the child, right? Whether, preferably without screen time, but if really necessary, appropriate screen time for a very limited period of time, but always with interaction with the caregiver.
Yes. Preferably with that, or sometimes the child can be left to play alone, but safe toys, so that they can also have some sense of independence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what about children between 18 months and 6 years of age, right? How can parents manage their screen time at that age?
Okay, so we are talking about like preschoolers, really, because they're going to like maybe early nursery, something like that, or in infant care. Okay, the recommendation for that age group, usually for 2 to 6, it's about 1 hour. I know
a day,
1 hour,
right? 1 hour a day.
A day, yeah. So when parents hear that from me, it's like, how can we manage 1 hour a day? We need to give them something, and then we can do something else. So I can understand that challenge because parents are so busy. They want to multitask. They want to like clean the house after coming back from work or something like that. And don't want the kid to always bother them. So I can understand that struggle. So I tell parents, okay, I mean, yes, it's a guideline. It's a guideline. Okay. But having, you can also splatter things like, put your toys that the kids can play, safe toys, like I mentioned earlier. You can have some play dates also if you can have some friend or someone to also take care. I mean, things like that. You can read with your child. You can draw, go out. You can do things. I think, we have to try.
Yeah. We have to be creative as parents, right?
Very creative. Yeah.
We learn along the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're not perfect, you mentioned earlier, right? So some days I think can be okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I can. So I'm not giving you a fixed rule that you have to, or, because it's very stressful for parents.
Yes.
So I think it's okay to give yourself sometimes a break, but also make sure that you give other things than screen time.
Yes, the alternative options and games, whether indoor, outdoor, and especially educational games, and always making sure that we have enough bonding time with them as well, right? I think,
yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I can imagine because I know what my children do with their children is which is in this age group, they would actually just give them divided screen time over the course of the day.
Yes.
It's 15 minutes, and then in the evening after dinner is half an hour when everything's done, and then again, all these in the full view of everybody around, and it's on a big screen on the TV, so everybody shares watching it together.
Yeah, that's great because, like you said, you don't have your own devices in your own room. Being on your own, being on your own.
Yeah. So we literally do not want to leave them to their own devices.
Yeah, so everything, like we say, there's a common room, right, which is the living room, and if you want to watch anything, it's right there. If you want your devices, you also come downstairs, for example, wherever you are. So at least you can see what the child is actually doing at that point.
Absolutely. Excellent. And as we go older now, so children 7 to 12 years of age gets a little more difficult now. A little bit more difficult. They can question more.
Yes, they can question
because
more.
Especially when they see friends who have more screen time than themselves, how can parents help them adopt healthy screen time habits with the now increasing peer pressure?
Not just increasing peer pressure, but in the school-wise, they're also being asked to do what we call the student learning space. Means they're doing work through, let's say, the online.
Yeah.
So these are things that we look like how many hours are they spending on. I think the COVID time was really bad because they were exposed for many hours, right? So thank goodness they're back at school and minimal in terms of home-based learning.
Yes.
So we need to commensurate that, what the school requirements would be versus what the child actually needs. So for the twins and the teens time where the peer communication, as we mentioned earlier, is so important to them, you have to be supportive in their usage of media. So again, the media wise, okay, my kids don't have social media. Okay, which is great. But then now my eldest one is starting to ask.
And how old is he now?
He's 15.
15. Yes.
Okay. So we told them about social media, but they have YouTube, so they go to the YouTube to talk. But my son being 15 now, that most of his friends are on social media.
Yes.
So yesterday he just asked us for it. Yeah. So my husband asked, like, okay, can you wait first? Mommy and daddy have to talk about this. So I mean, being the first child asking things, I think it is a learning point for us parents because, like as mentioned earlier, our occupation can be a hazard as well. Right. So we have to think about the safety, what they're going to watch, how they're going to be affected by the influence.
And it sets a precedent because the other two are watching.
Correct. That's why we are very, cautious about the first one. So just now I just had a conversation with my eldest. It's like, you have to understand, just give us one more day. You just told us last night. We haven't had this conversation, but daddy and I would talk to you about this, so that at least we would be able to, help understand both points.
Yes. I can understand where you're coming from because as a principal psychologist and your husband being a psychiatrist, I'm sure both of you have seen many cases of the detrimental effects of social media and excessive screen use.
That's right. And he's taking his O-level next year.
Yes, that's another
the
one.
other thing is like, so that's not factors to consider.
Yes.
But I can see that he is, like you mentioned, the peer pressure. Like his friends asking, do you have Instagram? Yeah, so he's now that he is like, we have to, as parents, we have to like think through. But he said, are you unhappy about it? That I asked. He asked me just now. I said, no, I'm not unhappy. It just puts me at a position where I have to think through. We have to think through because you're the first kid,
Yes.
And like you say, it sets precedence to the other two.
Yes.
And we said we are also learning, and we are learning also from your experience, because the other two will also get it, see.
That's right. And the other thing is that different teenagers develop at different rates. Some are more mature for that particular age. So what one can manage at 15, the other child might only be able to manage at, let's say, 17 or 18, perhaps, in a responsible way, right?
Yes, that's right. So it's very hard to put an age there. And so, like, I'm just saying as an example is, at this point, if your kids are not exposed to social media yet, I think this is a good start point, as you can see my struggle.
Yes.
Even with so-called being a psychologist, or my husband being a psychiatrist, or this mental health thing, the people that we see, we struggle. So it's not an easy path. And if they already have, for example, I think it's also important to know, as we call, monitoring, what are they using it for? Talk to them, have a conversation about it. And also, if you have your social media, you can talk to them about what you're also using it for. Yeah. So like, again, it's a two-way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what you've brought up so far has been very useful, that even though you have not come to that decision yet as to whether to hand him the social media account, what you've brought up is very pertinent, very useful for us all, because it's about the journey, the process. When children ask, first of all, you actually set very good standards and very clear standards from the time they were very young. So they are quite used to these standards, right? Yeah. And then as time went on, you allowed them to have a little bit more use of this and that as they showed themselves to be more responsible. And now when it comes to something like social media, which is something which we know can have a lot of potential detrimental effects on teens and young adults, right? And you're actually sharing with us how it is important for the conversation between parent and child, and for the child to know that both parents need to talk about it and to weigh the pros and cons and so on. And when both parents come to a common decision, that is when you will then have another conversation with him and then move the process forward. I think what you brought up were very, very important and useful points for parents.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
No problem. I think it is the process I think most of us go through, or even I think all of us will go through at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. But besides the social media, like the apps, right? They don't have, so they need to ask permission. I think that's a good starting point when they know that they can ask. Well, not saying no, but that actually is a starting point of having a conversations and education
Right.
between the two. Means I'm not sure about his thinking, for example. He's educating me. He's educating us about why he wants to do this. I think it's good that you let your teen actually explain, not, having a decision and say, no, I don't listen. I think we need to listen to both sides.
Yeah, absolutely sure. Absolutely true. Fully agree with you. Now, can you imagine yourself as a psychologist and your husband as a psychiatrist, and you already face challenges, right, in managing, or rather helping your children manage screen time, I'm sure many parents would have lots of challenges as well, just like ourselves, right? So what do you think are the more common challenges parents will face when trying to help our children adopt healthy screen time habits?
Okay. For us, it's a bit easier because we started rules, we set boundaries. So then they know that, okay, when the structure is in place, the rules and boundaries are set in place, they know what to expect. But in the case that you mentioned, what if that hasn't been set before and they have, the kids are having their own, like screens. I think
so
again,
besides referring them to see you, right? Yeah.
No, I don't think that should be the first thing. I think the first point I always encourage is have a conversation with your kid. If there's either as a family as a whole, or if there's a kid that you have concern, speak with the child alone. And then speak about your fears about it. It's okay to bring up your fears about why you feel about something, about maybe their use of screen time or what they're watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's to us is very important. You have to speak up first. Yeah. Even your child may not want to listen. At least you give him a point or her a point to give. It's like sowing a seed there.
Right.
To help them to understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the importance of conversation, communication, these cannot be underestimated.
Cannot. Yeah. So I do see the struggles. You have to start somewhere. And I have parents who come to tell me that they already have a very bad relationship with the child. So taking away the screen devices creates a lot more problems.
Worse. It makes it worse.
So that makes it, like you say, they think that you're controlling their life.
Yeah.
That's
right.
And sorry.
No, carry on. Yeah.
No, so there are a lot of times they say they have hurt each other. There's a lot of hurt in the place already. So again, we have to have a starting point. Someone has to say sorry.
Yeah.
Your child wouldn't, I can tell you. So
as
a parent.
Why do I think you're right? Yeah. But I think what you brought up is so important, that it is very important for us to have a good relationship with our children before we even talk about other things like managing screen time, managing devices, and the various aspects of the internet world, right? Yes. And I always like to share with parents the importance of the ABCs, right? To build that relationship now. A being affirm them of our love for them, affirm them of their goodness, the intrinsic goodness. B, to being there for them, right? And then C, communication, getting the communication started from as early as possible, from the time they're babies, right?
Yes.
And D is for appropriate discipline, and E is for empathy, trying to understand where they're coming from. F is for forgiveness. G is to really be God-centered, to let him take control of our lives in the family, right? Once these are intact and the relationship is good, we can then now talk about other aspects like what you have done, right? So because of your relationship with the children, you are able to set certain rules and boundaries which they are used to from young. And then after that, you continue the conversation with them as they grow older, and you are able to continue to discuss with them and share with them what are appropriate for their own use.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So like you said, that I really like what you said about the A, B, C, D's all the way to F. And the point where I talk about is forgiveness, especially when both parties have been hurt. I think like parents have to be the first person to say sorry about the things that you've done.
Not easy,
but it's a thing we have to do.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Natalie, it's been great having you on this podcast. It's been very, very, very useful, I'm sure, for many parents. So before we end this podcast, is there anything else you would like to share with our Catholic parents?
Okay. I can tell you as parents, right? We can have the book knowledge, as I mentioned earlier. We have a lot of knowledges, but parenting is still always not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be an easy journey, but it's good to have a support system. You're not alone in this. So it's good to actually reach out to others. Or like, having this podcast is really important. I mean, it's good because it helps others know that we're not perfect. We made mistakes before. But what have we learned from those experiences? Yeah. So this is one way, I'm talking about reaching out because I think it's important not to be on your own. For this.
It can be tough. It can be tough.
It can be tough.
We have to manage everything ourselves.
Yeah. But as you mentioned earlier, I think the main message is also to start your children as early as possible about healthy habits.
Right.
Establishing good relationships, building rapport, all these things that we do talk about, bonding time, interacting with them, engaging with them. I think it sounds like there's a lot of things, but it's not about doing 24/7. It's the quality of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie. It's really been very wonderful having you on this podcast, and I myself have learned quite a lot.
Yes.
So maybe I can share this with our children too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, maybe there's one more thing I would like to maybe just
sure.
We talk a lot about screen times, and I think we talk about habits, good habits too. It's not just about screen, but also joining groups, interest groups also. I mean, our church have a lot of groups, right? To actually engage. You can engage your kids in doing ministry work and stuff like that. Because when they form that kind of good relationships with others, I think it's going to be helpful for your children growing up as well. Yep, that's it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much once again, Natalie, for sharing your insights and experience with us. And looks like we're all on this journey and on this journey together. And it's so important to get the foundations correct before we can carry on this journey in the best possible way we can with God's grace and with Him leading our family. So once again, thank you very much, Natalie. And wishing all the best in your journey and in your decision to help your son make that leap into the social media world.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and take care, and God bless you always. Yeah.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye Natalie. Bye.